this term we're going to look at rural settlements and urban settlements. In your book, you can refer to topic 4, and it starts on page 170, and topic 4 has got 7 chapters that we have to work through. Chapter 1 is the study of settlements. Chapter 2 is rural settlements. Chapter 3 is rural settlement issues. Chapter 4 is urban settlements. Chapter 5 is urban hierarchies. Chapter 6 is urban structure and patterns. And chapter 7 is urban settlement issues. Today we're going to specifically look at chapter 1, which is the study of settlements. We're going to discuss the concept of settlements, site and situation. We're going to look at what rural and urban settlements are and how they differ. And we're going to look at settlement classification. How do you tell if it is a rural or an urban settlement? 7 billion people on Earth. About half of the world's population lives in rural settlements and half live in urban settlements. In this topic, we're going to study rural and urban settlements. We'll investigate why and how settlements develop and the reasons for their location and appearance. We'll look at case studies and examples from South Africa and abroad, and we'll illustrate the challenges facing settlements and how they are managed and how we can improve them. On this page, you've been given 3 figures and an activity. Figure 1 and figure 2 represent our rural settlements in South Africa, and figure 3 represents an urban settlement. So, what do you think the people are doing in those areas? What type of living do you think they do? How many people do you think live in each of those settlements? Are there more in the urban or are there more in the rural? Could you possibly tabulate any similarities and differences on a piece of paper? And what other type of rural and urban settlements do we have in South Africa? So one of the things is a lot of people sit there and think squatter camp is a rural settlement. But we need to know the definition of how to classify a rural settlement to see if it does actually fall under that. Because generally you have more people living in your urban settlements and less people living in your rural settlements. But we need to try and figure out in South Africa, do our squatter camps fall under urban settlements or do they fall under rural settlements? And how do we classify that? So that's what we'll look at a little bit later. But here at activity 1, study the photographs and use your senses as imagine the sounds, sights and smells that you experience in each of these scenes. It's not going to be very busy and hustle-bustly, right? You'd probably smell a lot of dirt and not a lot of pollution compared to your urban settlements. So describe the type of daily work and chores that people living in these rural settlements would do. Think about the activities that exist in those areas. You need to understand large land areas generally are related to farming principles, right? And livestock. So think about those. Suggest 3 disadvantages and 3 advantages of living in these rural settlements. Specifically just the rural settlements. The advantages are the things that would draw people there or that are good things about that area, and your disadvantages are you're trying to list the bad items. Describe the effect or influence that the development of computers, television, the internet and cell phones have had on these 2 rural settlements. This is very, very important, especially now today when we're going through COVID-19, stuck at home, whether you're in an urban settlement or in a rural settlement. Television, computers and internet and cell phones have made connections between individuals a lot easier. Look at the way we're doing school right now. So think about those points. If we look at figure 4.3, describe the scene that you see. Now be detailed, guys. Look at all the items on that image. List 5 jobs that people living in the city would do to earn a living. And suggest 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of living in the city. Once you've written down those answers, pause this video, And then once you've written down those answers, look at the answers on the next page to see if you got it right. Now, if we describe the type of daily work and chores that people living in rural settlements would do, we'd understand that there's subsistence farming, which means they growing crops just for themselves so that they can sustain themselves or as a profit. You've got livestock farming and you have horticulture. Your disadvantages could include, your disadvantages and advantages of living in these areas. Your disadvantages could include a lack of work in your secondary and tertiary sectors, people having to travel far distances to shops, schools, or hospitals, and your advantages could include less crime, no traffic problems, and little air pollution. Describe the effect or influence that the development of computers, television, and the internet had on these two rural settlements. Well, technology has allowed some tertiary and quaternary activities to occur in these rural settings. For example, people living in rural areas now have access to information and services that they previously did not have access to. Question 4, if we look at that image, we can see there's lots of tall buildings, there's many people, there's roads and other transport links like the SkyTrain that exists there. Or there are many services, there's good infrastructure, there's a few natural features, but most of the natural features have been replaced with concrete, cement, bricks, glass, and tar. Question 5, list 5 jobs that people living in the city would do to earn a living. Well, think about it. We've got shop assistants, we've got the financial sector workers, we've got teachers, cleaners, doctors, nurses, office workers, business people, government employees, IT people, advertising agents, marketing agents, retail workers, people that deal with transport, so your Uber drivers. Most jobs will be in the service sector, so that's your tertiary activities, and in the quaternary activities. Question 6, suggest 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of living in this city. Well, think about it. You've got infrastructure provided for. You have electricity, water, sanitation, maybe even cable or fiber. We call it fiber here. You have employment opportunities. There's more jobs available. You have access to entertainment. Friends and family are probably close by. You've got good transport facilities and access to services like banks, hospitals, and schools. Your disadvantages in this sector is that there's a lot more crime. It's dangerous. There's congestion, pollution, unhealthy, anonymity. I can't say this word. Anonymity. So basically, you can walk down the street and nobody knows you. Sometimes that could be an advantage depending on the type of individual. It's expensive, it's overcrowded, you've got small apartments, you can have unemployment, there's sometimes poverty in certain areas. Any of those would have been accepted as a valid solution. So settlement geography is the study of your site, situation, size, complexity, pattern, and function of human settlements in the past, the present, and the future. And specifically, what we want to know is what is a settlement. So before the last ice age ended 12,000 years ago, humans lived as hunters and gatherers, constantly moving in search of food. The domestication of sheep, goats, and cattle, as well as the cultivation of wheat, rice, and maize, enabled people to settle and remain in one place. This group of people, or these groupings of people, activities, and buildings is called a settlement. So all humans live in some type of settlement. So on our screen here, we've got a settlement as a place where a group of people live, buildings occur, infrastructure exists, and you have social and economic activities that happen. A settlement can be as small as a village or as large as a city, with the main criterion being that it operates as a single integrated system on a regular daily basis. So activity 2 asks you to write a paragraph to describe one of the following: the settlement in your school, the settlement in which you live, or another settlement that you are familiar with. There are guidelines that they've given to you to describe your chosen settlement. And I think it's easier just to draw up a table to enter the above mentioned criteria. Okay, so create that table that's sitting over there with the density of buildings in an open space and provision of municipality services. Those are the two guidelines that they've given so far. You want to look at your settlement, so my settlement choice, that could be your school, that could be the area in which you live, or another area that you're familiar with. And then compare it to figure 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 on the previous page. Okay? Decide which of the four settlements are similar and describe the factors that make them similar. So wherever you are, describe which one is similar to which figure that you've looked at. So the school is obviously in a more rural setting, so we would be more similar to 4.1 and 4.2. Decide on the factors that make them similar. So list those for me. The actual place where a settlement grew is called its site. Many factors influence the choice of a site. Site factors explain why a settlement was built in that particular place and not somewhere else a few kilometers away. Whenever I travel through South Africa, I'm always fascinated with how people chose the locations in which those towns are created. There's very small towns along the way wherever you're traveling, and most of the reasons why people chose to live in those areas has to do with a few factors. These factors are physical factors, economic factors, trade and transport factors, cultural or social factors, political factors, and historical factors. You guys can read through page 173, listing all those factors and items that are related to it. But let's go look at which factors affect the site here in the little information diagram. So we have, I'm just trying to get my pen color going here. There we go. Okay, so what factors affect the site of a situation, of a settlement? Here we've got fresh water access and transport. How is the river a transport mechanism? Well, logging industries use it to send the logs down to the factory. That would be which would be established a little bit lower down. Another thing is that you can travel up and down the river. If you've got a motorized boat, you can travel against the river, and then traveling down with the river, you don't have to use the motorized boat. Now, that's why we sometimes build along the riverbanks, because we can access things from the river. The other thing is that it's got flat lands, it's sheltered, and it can also prevent flooding in this area. It's this side of the river ends up forming a defensive side, so you are protected from that one side. People can't attack you from that one side, which means you only have to look at one area. And the other thing is that there's fertile soil that is brought by the river and deposited onto the banks, and that fertile soil is important for growing crops. Trees tend to grow close to the river because it's a good water source, therefore it's nice firewood that's available for fuel. And sometimes people build their houses on top of a hill because they can see every side down that hill, they can view people traveling up that hill, and it's generally seen as a defensive mechanism for building a settlement on top of a hill. Phew, the words are struggling out this morning. Okay, so look at these factors, understand all of them, be able to describe them. The situation of a settlement specifically means the settlement's location in relation to its surrounding features. So, to describe the situation of a site, the features surrounding the site are referred to. For example, we need to refer to the soil, the climate, other settlements, rivers, geology, and vegetation. The features that define a settlement's situation usually influence the type of activity that will be carried out in that settlement. If you're living on a rocky mountain, you are not going to plant maize because it's all rocks, right? So some settlements have a poor site but an advantageous situation. For example, Kimberley was established on a poor site, but its situation was advantageous due to the discovery of diamonds in that area. Kimberley has continued to develop due to its situation as an important urban settlement in the Northern Cape, despite the fact that its site remains poor. A geological fact, Damascus, dating back to 9000 BCE, is often claimed to be the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in the world. Go Google that and go watch a little video on Damascus. Now, the definition, guys, of situation is the study of the relationship between the settlement and its region. It generally tells us why it was established there. The situation indicates the types of activities that are going to be carried out in that situation. So if we look at the situation example on the right, we end up having Dornstad, which is this guy over here. And why has this grown into a major port settlement? Well, it's kind of centralized between these lands around it. So if we are to think this is on Northern Europe, and Northern Europe has got is really close to London, so this ends up being England. So you end up being very close to England over here, and the connections between these to get trade and commodities will probably stop here at Dornstad, and then it will be spread amongst everywhere. And then it's also sent, do you see that Dornstad is in a perfect location along river lines? So a lot of trade and infrastructure could possibly have traveled down these river lines, and then the whole city's infrastructure was developed here by the Dornstad. So let's look at activity 3. I don't think I put activity 3 in the slides yet. Let me do that quickly. Okay, so activity 3. Understand the factors that influence settlement sites in their situation. They've given us a topographic map of Zeerust on page 24. Zeerust is located in the northwestern province. Maize is the main crop grown in this area, and the area experiences warm, rainy summers and cold, dry winters. Guys, you'll find this on page 24 in your textbooks. Go look at it. You can't clearly see what I'm seeing. You can't clearly see what's being asked or whatever. There's not detailed information on here. You have to look at it in your textbook. So, locate the farmstead of the farm called Kariespruit, or F1, at the coordinates 25 degrees 32 minutes and 30 seconds south and 26 degrees 1 minute and 45 seconds east. So locate the farmstead called Kariespruit in F1. So that's F1, and there is, looks like that's Kariespruit over there. And it's at those degrees. Describe the factors that have influenced the site of this farmstead. Look around at what it has. Look at the contour lines. Look at the river patterns. Look at all those items. Study the surrounding areas and use the information provided to describe the situation of Kariespruit. Kariespruit is also very close to this Zeerust. So maybe it's close enough for shops. Okay. Study the settlement of Ikageng on H9 and H10. So where's H? Here's H, 9 and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's over here, 9 and 10. In these squares, look at that and describe the situation of the settlement. Remember, when you're describing the situation, you're looking at what activities are being conducted in that area so that you can make assumptions on the soil, the climate, the rivers, the geology, the vegetation. Okay? Discuss the site and situation of your own home settlement. If available, make use of maps, Google Maps, or an atlas. You all have internet. You can all go and give me a screenshot of your home from Google Maps. Okay, so please complete activity 3 and submit it for marking.